So normally I try to at least have a semi-clean background when I hop on live to talk to you guys, but I am knee deep in moving and it is crazy. So I close on my house in Washington on Thursday or Friday is what we're shooting for. And then, so I'm loading up a U-Haul and driving down the rest of my stuff down to Bend on Friday, and I am in it. So I'm going to just turn so you guys can kind of see how awesome my kitchen looks right now. I want to keep it a little bit real for you guys. But even with all of the chaos that is happening in my world right now, whoa, I still wanted to come at you and give you some sales facts to break down some of the sales fiction that's out there. So if you don't know me, my name is Christy Lawrence with Time to Profit. And what I do is I help business owners that are struggling with sales. And if you're feeling stuck around sales, if you're feeling like you're hesitating around sales, you know your craft, you know your product and your service, you love what you do, but if you're having a sales conversation and you're like, man, I just don't love it and it's not really clicking, I am here to help. What I want to do is help you to break down, I call it sales fiction. So all of the lies about sales that are keeping you stuck so that you can really demystify the sales process and not only multiply your sales, but actually engage in sales in a way that helps you to sell authentically and with sincerity. So you're selling on your terms and the process becomes rewarding for both you and for your prospects. So today, what I really want to talk about is managing the maybes. So hit me up in the comments or like this if you have ever had a client, you've done a proposal, you've put everything in place, you've asked for the business, and then all of a sudden they're like, let me think about it. Maybe I need to talk to somebody else. I need to talk to my board of directors. I need to talk to my business partner. I need to talk to my spouse. So how many of you, when it comes to sales, have ever gotten that? Maybe. I know I get those, right? A lot. And here is what I implore you around sales. And here's where the myth kind of busting comes in is there are people out there that will tell you, oh, hi, Harley. Don't live in the maybes. And that is true, right? But the myth part of it is that maybe isn't a bad thing in the moment. There are going to absolutely be times when it's an appropriate thing for the client to say maybe. And I want to talk about this a little bit more because a lot of times I feel like what people feel like their options are when somebody says maybe is to either put pressure on them, get the client to or the prospect to commit to a yes or a no in that moment, or to basically just say, okay, right? Sure, think about it. Absolutely. But there's a middle ground here. There is something besides being a hardcore, pushy salesperson that nobody likes and just being passive and saying, okay, right? So, really thinking about sales, the goal of sales isn't to get people to say yes. We're going to talk about this a lot. I always am saying this, but the goal of sales actually isn't to get your prospects to say yes. It is fully to connect with people who can get value from what you offer and make it easy for them to work with you if it's a good fit. Part of your job in sales is to help them discern if it's a good fit. And when you get a maybe, this is what I really want you to think about. Your job here is to help them move past the maybe, not to pressure them to a yes, not to get them to say no, but to move past the maybe. So I want you to think about right now, do you have a specific client or prospect where you've put out a proposal, you've asked them, hey, does this seem like something you'd be interested in? And they've said, let me think about it, or let me get back to you. Let me kind of talk to this other person in the business and I will let you know. Think about that specific client. And here's what I want you to think about. You will hear me say this all the time. One of my sales mantras is never be closing, but always be asking. And that is true when it comes to the maybes as well. The last thing that I want you to do is go and put pressure on the client to make a decision right there when they're not ready. People sometimes need time to think. This is okay. I know for me, I went onto the U-Haul website, oh, I don't know, like 5 times this week before I actually reserved the U-Haul. And that's because I knew I needed to do it. I was ready to do it. But then as I was getting in the process, I realized there was things I needed to make sure were going to happen before I could commit to that day, right? So if all of a sudden the U-Haul representative is calling me, you need to decide now, this is our last one, that is not going to be a rewarding process for me as a prospect. There's nothing about that that's going to feel good to me. I don't want you to do that to your prospects, and you don't have to. You can move past the maybes without having to treat your prospects like they have to make a decision right now and being disrespectful. So there are times, right? Sometimes they do have board of directors. Sometimes they need to get an approval from their accountant. There are a lot of reasons why people need time to think and can't give you a yes right then. That doesn't mean that you just let them maybe sit there and you don't help them discern whether or not it's a good fit and whether or not they're ready to move forward. So what do I mean by that? What I mean by that is that you have to help them figure out, do they want to move forward? And how you do that is by asking, right? We ask people questions because we want to just help them get through the process and help them understand what is the hesitation. So here's some questions that you can ask when somebody gives you a maybe. Who else needs to be involved in this decision? Are there other people that I can talk to with you? Is there some specific information that you're missing that might help you to make a decision? Is there a part of the proposal that doesn't feel good or you're not comfortable with, right? Is there something that's giving you hesitation? All of these are valid questions, and they help you really understand where the prospect is at. And it's important because people need time to think, but oftentimes people will also use a maybe to avoid the discomfort of having to say no. And your job is to kind of help figure out where they're at. Because here's the thing is people hate discomfort, they hate saying no, but they also hate having things on their to-do list. So this is why I talk a lot about on-ramps and off-ramps. You want to make it easy for people to say no. You want them to feel comfortable if they're not a good fit for your business. When you get people to say no quickly that aren't the right fit for your business, your sales are going to dramatically improve. You're not going to be spending time with people that you're never going to win the business on. You're going to be working with better clients. So when you get a maybe, if you're asking strategic questions to help them discern, do I just not want to say no, right? Or is it that I really have other things that I need? I need more information. I'm not sure about the pricing. There are other things that I'm uncomfortable with. Help them to make those decisions. And then, depending on how they answer those questions, you might have more work to do. You might need to give them more information. You might need to negotiate, right? So I will give you an example. I had a prospect that I was working with recently, and their big issue was pricing and cash flow. And at first they needed to talk to their leadership committee and their board, and then I didn't hear anything. And so I followed back up with them, and we got into a negotiation, something we could both work with. But you have to help them, like, is this a pricing conversation? Is this a fit conversation? Is this a timing conversation? It's okay to ask those questions, and you want them to feel comfortable regardless of what the answer this is. This isn't hurry up and you have to decide today type of pressure situation. Okay, so let me kind of recap what we've talked about. It's okay if people want to think about things. Sometimes they need to think about things. Your job is to help them go through that thinking process when you're in sales. You do that through questions, right? Asking right questions, helping them really think through it. And then it's okay to let them have time, to let them get off the phone, to let them walk away from the meeting without a signed contract. So, right, one of the sales myths out there is like, don't ever leave without a signed contract. I really don't find that to be true. I think sometimes there are times when people need to think, and we want to help create a safe environment for people to be able to make a decision that makes sense for them. So then what actually a lot of times will happen is they've said they need to think about it. It's okay for you to ask for a deadline, to say, okay, can you give me a timeline of when I can expect to hear back from you? Oh, well, we're having our next board meeting um, next Tuesday, so I should know by Friday. Awesome. Follow up with them on Friday. That's your job now, is to help them to stay accountable to the promise that they've made to give you an answer, because you don't want to stay in the maybes forever. So if they've given you a deadline, get back to them. If they haven't and they just disappear and they're just sitting out there forever, it's okay to proceed with a go, no go conversation. So that's what I call these go, no go conversations. So something along the lines of, are you still interested in pursuing this? Or could you give me a quick yes? We're moving forward. Not quite yet. I still have questions. Or nope, this isn't a good fit by the end of the day, so I can plan out the rest of my schedule for the quarter, for the month, right? Give a deadline, be direct, ask for the yes or no, and you can do that kindly and respectfully, right? So there's this quote from Seth Godin, if you're living in the maybes, you're almost never getting a yes. And I don't think that's true, because I have a lot of clients that when we first did proposals were in the maybe stage because they needed more information, and that's okay, but they can't stay in the maybe forever. And that's where we get hung up in sales, is that we let people stay in the maybe forever. We don't ask questions when they give us a maybe. We don't get clarity from them on timelines and set expectations, and we don't hold them accountable after the maybe to give us a yes or a no to move the conversation forward. So bottom line, a temporary maybe, they need to think about it, is okay. I will give you one caveat. They've probably already decided. So whether they've decided yes, but there's still part of them that's like, oh, I just need some more justification, some more evidence of why this is a good decision, or I just need to, like, I want to do it, but there's just, I got to get some more information and make sure that I feel good that it's a good decision, or I'm probably not going to do it, but I'm not ready to say no yet. They are already leaning one way or another when they give you a maybe. And that's okay, right? We don't want to put too much pressure on them in the moment, because even if they're likely thinking yes, that if you put too much pressure on in that moment when they just need time to think and digest, they often will bolt. And it's also not kind. And we want to treat our prospects kindly and with respect. And so it's okay to let them have that time and that space to think about it. Be curious, figure out what the part is that they're stuck on, figure out where the hesitation is, figure out what their timeline is for making a decision, then let them breathe, and then follow up when you can and get that yes or no, right? So if you are stuck on a maybe, share in the comments below, and I will share with you some next steps on how you can approach that specific situation. If you are ready to get more tools to help you break down the sales myths that are out there and multiply your sales, head on over to mytimetoprofit.com, and there is a free sales planning tool and checklist along with some other resources you can find on the blog. Get those, they're great sales planning tools. Again, that's mytimetoprofit.com. And I will see you guys next week, officially an Oregon resident, which is crazy. I've lived in Washington my whole life. So I'm going to go from being a Washingtonian to being an Oregonian. I have to get a new driver's license, all kinds of stuff to do on the to-do list. But sorry for the kind of chaos that's happening around today, but I wanted to still get you guys some good sales tools and information for the week. Again, share your experience with the maybes in the comments. Head on over to mytimetoprofit.com, get your free sales planning tools and resources, and I will see you right here in the Time to Profit, on the Time to Profit Facebook page next week, next Tuesday. So have a great rest of the week. And if you have people that have been hanging out in maybe for a long time, ping them with those go, no go conversations. Can you give me a yes or a no? I need to plan my schedule. I'm ready to close your file. Help me to help you. It's all good. Don't be afraid to do that too. So thanks so much for your time.